My name is Susan Hunt. I'm Keaton's mom. Keaton's the love of my life. He's my firstborn, my only son. He played football in the middle school, and he was also a wrestler. He loved the water. He learned to swim when he was 3 months old. He was a lifeguard, certified scuba diver at age 10. Just loved being around anything like that. He liked being outside.
I'm Lisa Robbins, and this is my husband, Tommy Robbins. And Justin Payne is the firstborn child of mine from my previous marriage. We got married when Justin was 7. He is the oldest of 3. And he was the responsible kid. He was the one that the parents would call me and say, "Hey, are you letting Justin go over here to so-and-so's to camp out?" And I would be like, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, I'm going to let Landon go, because I know Justin will watch after him." That's just kind of the rapport he had with the neighborhood parents. He was the one that kept his room clean. He would make sure everything was, just so. And he never wanted to disappoint you. Just good all-around kid.
We've always warned them about alcohol was in their family, both our families. And he never was much of a drinker.
No, he's seen his father drink, and he never wanted to be like that because he's seen some pretty bad stuff. When the guys wanted to try and smoke weed or whatever, he didn't care nothing about it.
I was one of those that said, I don't think so. Not Keaton. I raised him better than that. He knows better. He was always hanging out with good kids. And, I knew their parents, and they would go to parties and do things, but I always made sure he was with other people who I trusted. So maybe I was sticking my head in the sand, but I never thought about it, especially when he was 14, 15, growing up about that age. I never thought about it.
I started as a nurse probably 35 years ago. Randolph Community College, started LPN, went to a 2-year program there, went to UNCG, got my 4-year degree, and then I went on to Duke ultimately and got a nurse practitioner. Where I am now, I treat 16 and older. And primarily, we do not do substance abuse and treatment. We refer out for that, but we see a lot of patients who come in who are having issues that we may need to address. 22 years ago, we didn't see a lot of adolescents. You didn't see kids. Predominantly at that time, you saw somebody would get something from home. They would have Tylenol. They would have a parent's medication, a grandparent's medication. What we saw that came in from patients who had overdosed, as opposed to what you see today, was just a whole different ballgame.
I thought Keaton might have been smoking pot. I guess he was probably 15, and I had to do a DJ party, and I had left something at home. Tim had gone with me, my husband had gone with me, and he went home to pick up whatever it was I left at home. Keaton and one of his friends were outside in the backyard, and Tim could smell pot. We had searched his truck, and we found quite a bit of marijuana. We found some scales. We found a glass pipe. I was really concerned, and he was very ashamed. He cried. He said, "I will never do this again. I'm so sorry." And we just, watched from then on. We searched his truck from time to time, and for a while, everything was fine. We didn't find anything.
He was about 19, and he was in a relationship with a girl. I was sitting there one night, and I heard him talking to her, and she was out with several of her work friends, and she was talking about they were going to do cocaine. And he's laying on the couch saying, "Don't do this, don't do this." He said, you might mess up your life. And he cried. I just told him, I said, maybe she won't do it. And he said, Mom, she's going to do it. You know, he says later on she got some prescription medicine from her mom's cabinet from surgery, and she showed him how to crush it up and snort it. And I think that was over. I think that did it. He became addicted. She didn't.
The initial decision is voluntary, but over time there are changes in the brain caused by repeated drug use that the individual's self-control and ability to make sound decisions goes away because you start affecting your neurohormones in the brain. One of them being dopamine, which is one of our feel-good hormones. It's a motivating hormone. If you take certain drugs, you get a high quantity, it eventually turns off. And then your brain's like, you know what? I don't have to make any right now because you just slammed this big ton in here. It's done. And so it's got to wake back up. And so people can't sometimes turn that off. They just keep drinking or taking pills or whatever to keep that going because they know there's going to be a crash and burn effect because they felt that. An adolescent or a teenager or even a young adult, biologically, prefrontal cortex has not fully developed. You introduce a medication to them that has a lot of fun to it, they don't know how to turn that off.
I think it was about a year, maybe 18 months. And I saw black fingerprints on my bathroom door on the inside of the bathroom. I mentioned it to my husband. We started looking. And in his room, we found corners of plastic bags with white residue on them. And we knew then that something was up. We went and got in his car, and we found white residue. We found more glass bongs. We found the concentrated marijuana. Found a lot of stuff that we were not happy about. I looked on the internet and looked for pictures of the same stuff that I had found, and apparently he was smoking black tar heroin. When I found out about the black tar heroin, he had already graduated from high school. I knew about the pot in school and was trying to manage that, and then really thought he was doing good because I had drug tests at home and was testing him, and he was coming up negative. But then we found out that he had some sort of apparatus that he can tie around his waist and put fake urine in it. And he was peeing in a cup with someone else's urine and passing every drug test I ever gave him.
And you didn't know anybody who had been through something similar?
I didn't know anybody that did drugs like that, no. My child was not what you'd think of as being a drug addict. Not my son. So I was too ashamed. I couldn't tell anybody. And I just thought, how did we get here? From smoking pot, how did we get here?
His appearance changed and his actions changed. He didn't want to be around us. He didn't want to go outside and do anything. Fishing, hunting, gone. It's like the happiness was gone. You could see it in his eyes when he come, the fading out at family functions, just not there. There, but not there.
I had a child together, and he's not responsible, can't pay the bills.
I mean, we literally had to go down there and carry them wood so they could stay warm in the house because they neither one could do it. And then it's always the borrowing money. Can I have $60, the magic number? I'll never loan $60 again. I'll loan you $100 and I'll loan you $50, but I'm not giving you $60. That was the magic number for getting the pills. But the worst part is when he started the IV usage.
would come and steal, or would come and it would call and find out when you're not going to be there and come and steal things so he could get money and do what he wanted to do. And done it like 2 or 3 times on Mother's Day. He knew that we would go to the graveyard, her mother's grave site, every Mother's Day. It just took advantage of the knowledge that he had.
My mama died when I was 10, and I had her rings. We had been somewhere, and I come in, and I noticed the ring was gone, and then our wedding band, and then my engagement rings. And I got looking, and there was a bunch of jewelry gone. It was my mama's stuff, and I didn't have anything from my mama except for this. It got so bad to where he stole from us that my only choice as a parent, as a mother, his mother, was to press charges.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Andy Gregson. I was a prosecutor in the military and did a lot of drug prosecutions, unfortunately, in the military. But I came here as an assistant DA in March 1st of 1994. Addicts very rarely have enough money or an independent source of income because they can't stay employed to support their habits. So obviously they're going to commit crime. Most of that crime is what we call property crime, theft, and things like that. But in the last few years, we've seen quite a bit of violent crime associated with drug use. There's a significant percentage of people that take, especially methamphetamines, that become quite violent. And we're seeing a lot of child abuse, we're seeing a lot of elder abuse, and we're seeing a lot of violence between the addicts. Small disagreements become a violent assault, sometimes involving a knife or a blunt instrument or even a gun if they can get one.
He got caught selling pot in Greensboro, and he also had some sort of, I believe they call it lien. And he called me crying, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I said, I'm not coming to get you. I told you, if you do this, you're gonna have to do the time. And he said, Mom, you gotta come help me. I'm getting ready to have to take a shower and they're gonna make me take all my clothes off. But I just hung up. He always seemed to me like Keaton because I guess I'm his mom and I didn't want to see what Tim could see. You know, my husband would say, Susan, he's messed up. And I would say, why are you picking on him? There's nothing wrong with him. He's tired. He's working all day. He just wants to go to sleep. He worked 2 different jobs. I didn't know. I didn't know what was going on. I didn't know that was withdrawals. He was going into withdrawals and he was sick and he had to leave and go get more drugs so he wouldn't continue to be sick. Because I've seen it since then. It's horrible. It's a horrible sickness. But I thought he had the flu. I didn't know.
People think an addiction is just them. It is a whole family disease. The whole family suffers. And it would be every morning waking up sick to my stomach. I'm going to get a call today. And I'm always thinking, do you hate me? You know, and he would tell me, no, Mama, I love you. None of this is your fault. You've been a good mama. I don't know why I do what I do. You know, we did everything we knew. We kicked him out. We let him back in. We let him go to treatment. So
there's no directions on how to raise a child after got addicted. You just totally feel like a failure.
What is the process? They're all different. What's going to work for him? It affected him seeing his father a certain way, but he went from being, I'm never going to be like that, to that's exactly what he did. Only worse. Only worse. He did it only worse.
I look at the word substance use disorder, and for me, it's a pretty word. Addiction is ugly. And so substance abuse disorder is a good way for people to understand you have a disease process that we're going to work with you. We're going to help make this right. Addiction is ugly, and it can turn into something you don't ever want to get into and not get out of, and you need to understand that. It's going to take you down a pathway where You lose your house, your home, your family, your friends, your job, your economic impact down the road, your health.
After he went to court, had his charges reduced, is that when he said something about getting some help?
That was when he decided to go to rehab because I told him he couldn't continue to live in my house. You can't use drugs and live in my house. We went to Moses Cone Hospital when he was ready to go to rehab. And I took a picture, and I still have it because I thought this is going to be the start of your new life. And we waited, and then they came and brought us a piece of paper and said, "We don't do this here. Here's some numbers you can call." And by the end, he was starting to feel bad again, and he was getting antsy, and he was ready to go, so we left. And we called those numbers, and there was no beds available. We called all of them, and there was no bed. I didn't know that you had to do detox before you did rehab. I just knew he needed rehab. It took us almost 10 days to find a place. My girlfriend was she had her master's in hospital administration, and she was the one that found Crestview in Asheville. And we took him to Crestview. I found out later from some of his roommates that the only reason he was there is because he wanted to continue living at home and knew that this is what he had to do, but he wasn't ready. He told his roommate he was going to use for 2 more years, and then he was going to stop and settle down and get a job and, maybe go to college, do whatever he wanted to do, but he was taking some time off from school, and he was going to take 2 years and use his drugs, and then when he finished, he was going to, start his life.
Beating any addiction is hard work. It's going to cost you. In the beginning, we try to give you all the resources the state has to get you clean because it benefits us. Hopefully, you take advantage of it. And I think that's what kids don't understand. This is not something that you flip a switch and you get over. Once you start down the path of addiction, to turn around is a tremendous amount of work. It's going to require sacrifice and hard work, and it's going to take a long time. The system becomes pretty brutal against you once you demonstrate that you're not going to change.
At 27 days, we got to go see him, and we got to take him to the Grove Park Inn, took some pictures, and I think we were out for maybe 3 hours. Before I got back to Asheboro, one of the directors had called me and told me that Keaton had failed his drug test and that he was being released from Crestview. They made him call me, and he said, "Mom, I need for you to come get me because they're asking me to leave." They had found fake urine in his room. And I said, "I'm not coming to get you. You can be homeless on the streets of Asheville, but you're not coming back to my house." But a friend picked him up and brought him home. And right after that, I found out he left and overdosed. Someone found him in his car. They called 911, transported him to High Point Regional. And then he stayed for 6 hours, and then they released him.
July 31st, 2019, we were at the beach, and we had his daughters with us because he said he didn't have the money to go. We left him at home. He was staying in the cabin, and
He stole my mother's car and went somewhere up North Asheboro and
game room.
the fish skills games, and he was in my mom's car, and it was right out in front of the place. And the camera happened to be on the car.
We were at the beach, and my daughter Corey started acting real odd and on the phone and kept going outside. And we were like, "What's going on with you?" And she said, "Mama," she said, "Justin has overdosed."
When I first started, the only true overdoses we used to have was in Archdale, which is right on 85. In the rest of the county, if you ever get overdosed, they were normally accidental and there were normally pills. And now you get overdoses everywhere. There are kids overdosing, there are older people overdoses. And they used to be relatively unusual to really get a true overdose. And now we're running a couple a day. I was in the supervisor's truck. I was actually driving around. So I got there before the crew did. Somebody gave him Narcan actually before me. He was still pretty blue because he wasn't breathing initially.
That first Narcan didn't do it. It took 3
I think it done
Narcans.
3 times and maybe a 4th when the paramedics got there.
We had a system with ventilations for a while. We started IV, but then he woke up and he became, I think it was probably about 6, 7 minutes. He became fully awake on the scene from the Narcan. And plus bagging him, getting his oxygen levels up.
"17 minutes and 45 seconds. He survived. He was lucky. He got a second chance. We got to see the video, and on
The girl
August the
that worked
1st,
at the place had
saved his
luckily
life.
she saved him. You give
Angel
him-
on earth. She saved my son that night, and a passerby had Narcan. There was no life. No life whatsoever.
When he woke up and finally came to, I think his first words was, "Please don't tell my girls. I've heard them enough already."
So we know he loves him. We just don't get to see him like he should.
It's hard.
Don't tell my girls.
Keaton had mowed the yard for one of our neighbors, and they gave him $35. And we had a list of agreements for him to be able to live at my house. And one of them was that he could only keep $5 in his pocket at all times. So I said, "I need the rest of that money." And he said, "I'm not giving you that money." And I said, "Well, short of me wrestling you down to the floor, I'm asking you right now to give me the $30. And he said, "I'm a grown man. I can manage my money. I'm not giving you the $30. And I got the phone call that night that he had overdosed.
Just a few minutes before that, though, and you had texted him.
Yes, I texted him before he went into the bathroom at McDonald's. I didn't know where he was, but he sent me a text, and I said, Keaton, don't forget, you have court tomorrow, and at any time you can be subject to a drug test. And don't forget, you have to go get your oil changed and your registration on your car updated. And then at the very end, I said, don't forget, you can be subject to drug test at any time. And he said, I know, LOL. And we looked at it. It was 8 minutes before he went into the bathroom.
And you got a call. Who called you?
I thought it was his girlfriend's phone. And I picked up the phone and I said, hey, girl, what are you doing? And an officer on the other end of the phone said, is this Miss Hunt? And I said, yes. And he said, do you have a son named Keaton? And I said, yes. And he said, I'm sorry to inform you he's been the victim of an overdose. And I asked him where he was, and he told me. So I got everybody in the car, and I don't know how I didn't kill us all, but I got to McDonald's, and I saw him laying on the floor of the men's bathroom, and they were doing CPR.
I remember it being a very hot day. We were out, I don't remember what we were doing, and we got the call, and when I walked in, I saw this young kid, and he's laying there. It's an obvious overdose. The police department was already on scene. They had already started CPR on him. So we jumped in. I was doing chest compressions on him, and I was getting tired, and the next person was rotating in to take my spot. So as I got up, and I had my back to the door, and I could hear somebody behind us. And it was a woman's voice, and she kept saying, is he okay? Is he okay?
And I started banging on the door, and I called out his name, and I said, you have to save him, he's my only son.
I remember going back in and doing it again. I told them, I said, guys, family's here, just do the best we can. That's all we can do. We're trying to just keep their body going long enough to get the medicine working. We've had people up walking and talking in a few minutes, and we've worked people for an hour and still get nothing back.
They'd been working on him, I understand, later for about 45 minutes, but a few minutes later, after I was banging on the door, they got his heart back. So I followed the ambulance to the hospital. And I thought, if his heart's back, thank God. But when I got there, they did a CT scan, and it was black. He was brain dead. He was brain dead. I remember saying, don't turn the machines off because he's an organ donor. 3 people were given another chance at life with 8 of his organs.
I'm Justin Payne. Grew up around Randolph County. Had a perfect childhood growing up, a great mother, wonderful stepfather. I'd smoke pot and drink a little bit, but I was never into any of the hardcore stuff. I had a girlfriend, and she was into some stuff that I didn't agree with at the time, cocaine and pills and stuff like that. I took cocaine from my baby mama when I found out she was using it, and took it from her so she wouldn't do it. And then it was kind of the temptation of, what's so great about this? Why is she choosing this over me? And that's what got me to try it. And then I had a few problems. I had kidney stones, and my appendix ruptured, so that kind of got me into the pain pills. Doctor prescribed them, but they never told me, you're going to be addicted to this. It wasn't like I took it and it's, oh man, this feels good, you know, I want more.
It's not always linear. You didn't go from A, B, C to D. You could be D and go back to A. It could be a mixture. Not everybody starts here and then progresses on to addiction. You can start, you can stop.
To start with, it was wonderful. When there wasn't really no consequences, it was all about a good time, fun. You come down, everything's good. I could work good, had all this energy, just wide open all the time until I become addicted to it. As my tolerance would go up, I just kept finding stronger and stronger pills until eventually there wasn't a pill strong enough and I had to go to heroin. I snorted the pills and stuff from the get-go, graduated to shooting up, and then it was nothing else could ever touch that, and that was the only way I could get it in my body fast enough to make me feel just normal. It become where I had to have it to even go to work, so I would start missing work if I didn't have it. It got to be every week thing, an everyday thing, just a snowball effect. When I didn't have it, I was thinking about getting it, and when I had it, I was finding a way to make more money so I could get more. Every day, wake up, do the same thing. When you have to have something to just get through your day, that's a whole different ballgame. I was probably spending $1,000, $1,500 a week on heroin, whatever I could get, as much as I could get. If it wouldn't have been for my stepdad working for him all these years, I wouldn't have been able to keep a job. I wouldn't have been able to maintain anything. I had other jobs, and either I quit the job because of drugs or because I was going to get fired or lose the job anyways. They kept letting me come back, go to rehab, go to rehab, go to rehab. I couldn't tell you how many times I've been to rehab. None of those helped me because I didn't think I had a problem. Every time I went into rehab, I went in with the mindset, how can I get out of here sooner to get high again? Whether it's robbing somebody, stealing from your mama, I've stolen from my kids, my dad, grandmas, grandpas, sister, it didn't matter. Had to have it. Once you get there, laying in the bed feeling like you got the flu, throwing your guts up, there's nothing else that will take it away. There's nothing that you won't do to feel that or get that fix. It was better than sex. Those of you that have kids, that's right there next to it. The feeling you get that you would do anything for it. Just like you would die for your kids, you would die for that.
How many people who are in jail with you got similar addiction?
Just about everybody that's in there. It's gonna be 85% of them, it's gonna be because of drugs.
I can tell you from being in this business a long time that the percentage is going to be around 80%, maybe higher. You're counting in that drug trafficking, drug sale, drug possession. Then you start counting child abuse, domestic violence is driven by substance abuse. You start looking at your property crime where they're stealing things to pay for their addiction. And it adds up to probably at least 80%.
How many times have you been in jail for?
Multiple. I was just, most of the time I was in a hurry to get out, hurry up and make bond. If I didn't have no money, somebody that would loan me the money till I could get out and get it, just so I could get out and get rolling again.
Prison is a very limited resource, and we try to reserve it for those people who are impacting the community the most, primarily violent crimes, but also property crimes when they will not take advantage of probation. I have about 3,200 pending felonies right now in Randolph County. We're at the breaking point with numbers. Even if you stay at the level of property crimes, once you demonstrate to us that you're not going to change, you're going to continue to commit crimes and to victimize the public, then the system can be brutal. And that's a shock to a lot of young people, that there's somebody like me or my prosecutors that really don't have any sympathy for you. We have to have sympathy, reserve our sympathy for the people who are being victimized. That's the way it is.
You could come from an affluent home, a poor home. You could have the best grades in school. And there is nothing that says that that person will not have a substance use disorder. But if they have the right things in place to actually pull from, then they can make a better informed decision about not taking that next step.
I've had multiple friends that I've had to hit with Narcan, give CPR. I've probably had 15 to 20 people that I was fairly close to that didn't have that chance to be brought back, have somebody around that cared enough to, try to bring them back. When you get out there like I was out there, I didn't care if I lived or died. It didn't. I needed my fix, and that's what mattered to me, was getting that fix.
And you look at them and you say, my gosh, you've been to prison 3 times. The majority of your young years you've spent incarcerated. When are you going to change? And they don't change. And so the system is left with no options. Probation, treatment, they're finite resources. And we have to reserve them for the people who are really going to try to change.
So after that overdose that day, you didn't get up off of that pavement and say, I gotta change something?
No. Nope.
How long was it before you used again after that overdose?
The next day. Probably would have used later that day if the law wouldn't have found my dope and took it. I was still dabbling pretty constantly, pretty heavy, up until about a year ago. I got a good girl now that was really supportive. My mom and my stepdad. I got a good job and really got a foundation behind me as far as, people I can talk to and people that know where I've been and are there to help me if I need somebody to talk to.
It doesn't matter where you live and where you come from. If you have the right people in your life and that you feel comfortable telling them anything. So if you ask me, what would I say to a young person? Stop. Think. Ask for help. Ask, why am I even considering this? Don't just grab it and go. Why is my best friend asking me to do this? Why is my group asking me to do this? Ask. Stop, ask, and ask for help.
I got involved in a clinic and got on methadone, and that's really, really helped me in the last 6 months. Everything just fell in place when I said enough's enough, and things just keep getting better and better.
Glimpses of Justin back,
Yeah.
smiling a little bit. talking a little bit more about stuff. He makes my heart proud right now. And you can't let your past control your future, or you won't have a future. And talk to your children, make them aware of the dangers of it, because it is dangerous, it's scary, it is evil on earth. That's the way I describe it. It is evil. We have been through hell.
At the time, I didn't see how crazy I was acting, because the drug, it impairs you that much. Do crazy stuff, walk around looking at the ground, trying to find, like you're gonna find a diamond or some kind of jewel or something. Think bugs are in your skin, pick your skin. The stuff I've done is almost unimaginable with me looking back now.
When you wake up these days, what's the first thing in your mind?
Food. Food and getting to work. I like what I do now, that I'm not strung out. I enjoy working on houses. My mom, she's wonderful. I don't know where I would be without her. I probably would have been dead a long time ago if it wasn't for her. But things are really, really falling into place and getting better.
Several of his usage friends they've OD'd and they're gone. And for most people, that would be a wake-up call. It took him a while, I think, to realize that maybe I could be next, and maybe finally, because it wasn't a treatment center that clicked for him. It's been good for 2 years. Been at 2 years, clean now.
One of the most tragic things that we see, though, is a young life that is forever changed and forever ruined by a choice they make in the moment. And a lot of these choices come out of addiction. And so when you go down that path, you tell yourself, I won't do this, fill in the blank, rob a store. But until you get in that addiction, you have no idea what you're capable of. And unfortunately, we see a lot of young lives who start on that path and they end up robbing a store. They end up pulling a knife on someone, and their whole life has changed. And they go to prison. And they end up in prison with some very violent, very scary people, because, again, prison is reserved, it's a very finite resource, is reserved for the ones who are the most dangerous to society. And what we see is a lot of kids find themselves being thrown in amongst those people because of a decision they made. And we know that they're probably going to come out of prison forever changed, and not in a good way most of the time.
All my friends, the majority of them are still in active addiction, so I can't really have friends right now. If you try to help them, unless they really want help, they're gonna get you to use before you get them sober, the majority of the time.
About a month after his funeral, I had it seemed like 2 or 3 phone calls a week of people saying, Susan, I hate to bother you, and I'm so sorry for your loss, but I found some white residue in my son's bathroom. You know, I was trying to help them get the help that I couldn't find. Since I've been working at Keaton's place, I deal with parents, we deal with kids. I think one of my youngest was 14 years old. I tell the parents in front of the kids, I tell the kids alone, this fentanyl especially is a game changer in the drug world here, because it will kill you. You are playing Russian roulette.
Fentanyl was added to a little bit of everything. So what used to be, in their mind, safe to get, I get a buzz, I get a high, became more deadly. Maybe the percentage of, people becoming addicted didn't go up, but the percentage of overdoses did, because of what was being laced in with the drugs. You're not just going out and getting, hydrocodone. You're not getting oxycodone. You don't know what you're getting.
Fentanyl is so cheap, it's being mixed in almost everything. We're starting to see some cases where marijuana is being laced with fentanyl.
We have people that come into Keaton's place now that tell me that they're using heroin, and when they do their intake at Daymark, they come back hitting on 13 different drugs that are in the heroin. It's just a big mess of whatever they feel like putting in there that day. And you don't know what you're going to get. And if you don't stop, you're either going to be in prison or you're going to be dead.
I want to eventually get where I don't have to rely on anything, methadone, anything like that, where I can be sober, wake up in the morning, don't have to have nothing. I want to take over my stepdad's business, and I really just want to make memories with my family because I've missed out on so much over the last few years.
So make yourself aware and be in their business. Be in their business. Ask the questions.
Ask.
Never quit loving them because it's not them, it's the disease. So never quit loving them. And to the user too, you think you sick because you need a fix. Your mama's sick too. Your daddy's sick too because you're breaking their heart. When she
He thought
said,
he was only hurting himself. So I'm not hurting anybody but myself. But that's couldn't be further from the truth. You're hurting everybody that loves you.
Winter's silence pulling so close, so close against me. I can hardly breathe. I recall all those nights, unrest biting my heels, and I would run, yes I would run, my bare feet against the pavement, just a streak against the sky. There I go and there I run to beat encouragement